So if you work with data a lot, and you've got like long list of data like I have here that just go on and on and on, what you might want to do is kind of like what we used to do in the old days when you'd see printers printing out on those just all those rolls of paper or those boxes of paper, and you'd see in the background of the paper like a like almost like a green bar happening every other maybe 6 inches or so. And that was a way of making it so where later on when people would look at the printout, they would, their eyes would get like a little break there because they'd have a little bit of color in the background to kind of break the monotony a little bit. So we want to kind of do the same thing here. And I want to show you a number of different examples. Now we're going to be using, conditional formatting here. And we're using formulas to take our data and turn it into where maybe the even rows, like rows 2 and 4 and 6 and so forth, where the even rows would have a color and the odd rows wouldn't, or where the odd rows would have the color and even ones wouldn't, but you'd have every other row being a particular color. We can also do it where we have groups. So we're going to say the first group of 5 or the first group of 10 are all colored in. The next group of 10 are not. The next group of 10 are. So it's kind of like an on and off kind of thing, or an off and on, depending on how you set it up. Over on the side here, I've got the formulas that you would put into the conditional formatting to make this happen. All right, so we're going to do a few of these, and you can see how this all kind of comes together here. So the first thing you want to do, like with anything else that we've done with conditional formatting, is that you want to select the area that you want that conditional formatting to appear. So in this case, we're going to start on row 2 and drag it across like this, and then drag all the way down to the bottom of the list. Now, I'm getting kind of lazy here, but you kind of drag it all the way down, get that whole area selected. There it goes like that. And then once you've done that, I'm just going to kind of bring it back up here at the top. So you get that area selected. And now let's say that we want to make it so where the odd rows will get the color. All right. So we're going to actually be using this first formula here. All right. So the only difference between the odd row versus the even row is that you've got an equals 0 at the end of that even formula. So we'll click on to the conditional formatting. We go down to new rule. All right. And then we go to where it says use a formula. And then in here, we'll type in that formula. So we'll type in equal and then MOD, left parenthesis, move that out of the way. And then we're going to type in ROW, left right parenthesis, comma, the number 2, and then the right parenthesis. Okay, that's it. So it might look like there's spaces between the characters here, but there aren't any spaces at all. All right, so that's what you have here. Now, what do you want it to do? Well, we'll go over into the format area. We'll go over to fill, and we'll say, well, we want to make it maybe green. So we'll pick the light green here, right? So you do that. You hit OK. And then hit OK again, and there we go. Pretty neat. So if anything, just looking at it just makes it a little bit easier to follow, to look at, and whatever. Now, what if I change my mind and decide I'd rather have the even rows do that? Well, then what we have to do in that case is we just go somewhere in the data, conditional formatting, manage rules, double click it, and at the very end of this formula we want to put there an equal and then a 0, okay, and that'll match up with the even rows one, this one right here. All right, once you've done that, you just go ahead and hit OK, hit OK again. There you go. So now it's the even rows that are highlighted. What's really interesting about doing this is that the formatting is being applied to either the odd or the even rows. And why that's important is that if you were to do this by hand, if you were to maybe go to that second row, highlight it, color it, go to the fourth one, color it, the sixth one, color it, and you did this all by hand, and you were to sort the data, it would all start getting all goofed up, all right? It would go all out of order, and you wouldn't have like the every other, all right? But in this case, what happens is that, let's say you go back into the data tab here, and we say that we want to sort it, let's say, by company. So we go in there and we hit the A to Z. It rearranges, so regardless of how it rearranged, it still does the even rows, see? If we go over to here and sort it by the dollar amount, same thing. Now, on the other hand, if I started doing filtering, that's going to be a little bit different, okay? Let me just show you this. If I go over to the, go somewhere in my data first, all right? Go to my data tab, turn on the filter, okay? There it is, all right? Now, let's say that I wanted to see just those rows that had seafood for category. Okay, that's how the filter works, okay? Well, then what you would do is you go over here to the little drop-down arrow next to the category name. We hit the select all right? And then we would find just the seafood, and we would click onto that, so that gets checked, all right? Hit OK, and we get this. Now, what happened? Don't worry about this over here. But what happened over here? Well, it hid all of the rows that were not seafood, all right? Well, because of that, even though the even rows are the only ones that are getting the coloring, because we have some of the odd rows in between hidden, it pulls them together so you don't get that every other kind of look. So, and the only way that you can get it back would be to go back in there and turn off the filter, just clear the filter, and then we would be back to where we're at. So how would you get around that? How would you get it so where, regardless if there's items hidden or not, it will still do like the every other row? How do we make that happen? Well, let's take a look. So let's go over, we're going to go over to the next tab where I've got an example for this. I'm going to also kind of zoom out a little bit there. Okay. So what we have is a formula that will, regardless of what's being filtered out, it'll still go back and just do every other for us, all right? So we've got two different ones. We got the first one here, which will, regardless of what's being filtered, the first row will be colored, the third row will be colored, the fifth row will be colored, the actual visual row there, all right? And the same thing with the other formula, that will be where it starts with the second one being colored in, all right? So that's the only difference, but it's a pretty substantial formula, but it's the only thing that we can do to make this happen, all right? So let's try this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the whole area here. Now I'm going to show you a quicker way of selecting all the area here. You click on the A2 here, okay? Then on your keyboard, you hold down the Control key, the Shift key, and then hit the right arrow key, and then the down arrow key. And then you can let go of those two keys. All right, that's how you get everything selected. Now, I'm going to go back up to the top just using the elevator here, all right? And I'm going to go ahead, I think I'm going to do the second one here. So I'm going to make it so where like the second row will be set this way. So what we'll do then is we'll go back into Home. We'll go back to the conditional formatting, go to New Rule, all right? Use a formula, and then we'll click right here, all right? Now the formula, again, is going to be this one right here. So we'll type in equal MOD, left parenthesis, and then subtotal. All right, and then our left parenthesis there, we'll type in the number 3, comma, and then we're going to type in $A1, all right? And then we're going to go ahead and put a colon in there, and then $A$1, right? Close off the parenthesis, comma 2, close the parenthesis, equals 0. Now, the subtotal function is something that looks at whatever is left over from a filter, whatever rows are left over from a filter, and it only calculates those rows that are seen. It doesn't calculate those that are hidden. So that's partly why we use the subtotal function in here to go through that, right? And we're using the number 3, which is the count function of subtotal, and that's what gives us like the every other. And the every other will be every 2, you know, it'll be, you know, it'll do like the second one, the fourth one, the sixth one, that type of thing. So that's why all that's in there like that. So once we've got that formula in there, then we'll go over here to format, all right? And we'll pick the color that we want to go with. Maybe we'll go with yellow this time. There we go. And then we'll hit OK, and then hit OK, and there it is. So as you can see here, it basically gave us, you know, exactly what we saw in the previous example. Now, though, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the category here and tell it that we just want to see seafood, right? So we hit the little checkbox. We go down to where, for the select all to get everything unselected. And then we'll go over here to seafood, hit OK, and look at that. So even though it's all over the place with this, it doesn't matter if it's odd or even. It just knows to do every other one, starting with the second one there. That's pretty cool. Now, if I went back in there, I'm gonna do this real quick here. Went back in there into the manage rules, and I were to double click the rule there and get rid of the equals 0, all right, then it's going to do the first one first and then the third one and so forth. So watch how it switches here when I hit OK. So there you go. See, so now we got the first one instead. So that's pretty slick. Okay, so let's look at one more of these. We're going to go to this third tab here, and what I'd like to do in this case is have it highlight every 5 groups of rows here. In other words, I want it to do something like this where it'll color in something like that or like that, all right? And then leave this alone, and then do the next 5, leave the next alone, do the next 5, and so forth, right? And I can do that, you know, using this this formula that you see over on the side there. So I'm going to do it where it starts off coloring the first 5, and that's why I have it set for first versus second, and whether or not you want groups of 5 or groups of 10, all right? Just so you know, too, that when it comes to groups of 5, you'll see a 5 there and a 5 there. When it comes to groups of 10, you'll see the 10 in place of the 5 on both of those, all right? So you could do groups of 3 if you wanted to, groups of 8, groups of 11, doesn't matter. You just make sure you got that number in both of those spots, and it works just fine. All right, so back to what we've got here. Let's now go back here, and we'll first of all, we need to select the data. So we'll click over here, Control Shift, right arrow key, Control Shift, down arrow key, right? That's pretty quick. And we'll bring it back up to the top here. Now, I'm going to do groups of 5 with the first group or first 5 rows being colored in. So we're going to do this formula right here. So we'll go to conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula, and I click onto here. And what I'll do is I'll type in equal, and then we'll do the MOD, left parenthesis, ROW, left right parenthesis. Now we'll do a -2, comma, and then we're going to do a 5 times, so put the asterisk in there, and then a 2, right? Close off the parenthesis, plus 1, and then less than or equal to 5. I think you've probably figured out by now that this would be something that most humans would not ever be able to come up with just by accident. I mean, this is ultimate geeks that are putting this kind of stuff together. They've come up with these things, right? I'm one of them, but you know. Anyway, so and I kind of messed up on this one. I didn't hold on my shift key, so I need to backspace that out and put the parenthesis in there. So that looks good. And then I think at the very end, yeah, we're all set there. So we got the left parenthesis, right, and then plus and all that stuff. Okay, now, next thing we need to do is figure out what we want it to look like, what color. So we'll click on the format. Maybe I'll pick the light, well, I'll go with the red. Let's do more colors here, and we'll do a very light, kind of a pink, maybe something like that. Oh, that's too dark. Now we'll do that one there. Okay, so do that, hit OK. There's the color, orange, I guess. Anyway, hit OK, and there we go. I love it. So even if later on you went back in here, maybe to the product name, went back up into data, and hit A to Z, it still stays in there. But if you were to filter this, then you're going to have a problem with that. But other than that, this is a great little deal here. So hopefully this helps you, especially if you're trying to you know, make your data a little bit more visually readable, and where you're not going cross-eyed looking at it after a while. So appreciate you watching the video. Take care.